Yeah,
an introduction.
we can wait another minute. Yeah.
Just in case folks are having
technical problems. Yeah.
Tech times.
Yeah, we can wait another minute. Is Kendall still in here? Wait, Kendall's not in here. Oh, is he an attendee? Okay, I'm gonna promote him. We were about to start without you. I was like, where's Kendall?
I had to rejoin for grand effect, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Should we go ahead and get started?
Sure, yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Bijan Berhimi. I'm adjunct faculty at PNCA. I also run a design studio gallery store called Fisk in Portland, Oregon. We've been doing this lecture series since 2016, and it's always been a lecture series that's been in person, where we watch amazing people speak about their practices and their lives. And over the course of the last 6 months, we've been kind of rethinking how we approach this, and through conversations with people like Kendall and Kristen and other colleagues, conversation has been a really healthy way of, I don't want to say escaping, but kind of working through this year. And it didn't feel as appropriate to do a traditional lecture series in that sense, and felt that a form of conversation could be a bit more therapeutic, as it's been for us privately. So we wanted to kind of bring these conversations publicly. So that's kind of the goal of the semester, is to have casual conversations and kind of draw parallels between students and professionals, and that we're all kind of going through a variety of struggles right now, and that they might not be that different. I met Kendall in 2013. Yeah.
12?
Maybe 12.
Yeah.
He was one of the first people I met in Portland, and has been a close friend and inspiration and collaborator since then. I describe Kendall as someone who has the most energy of anyone I know. He also is a person who likes to challenge himself and the others around him. And I think that's probably what I admire most about him, is his relentless energy in trying to be better. And I'm really excited to speak with him and everyone else more today. I'm not going to dive too much into Kendall's practice. So I want to talk a little bit about the format of this series. So this is integrated into my class, which is with third-year design students. And each panelist is assigned, or 3 students are assigned to each panelist, and their job is to do research on the designer's practice and participate in this panel discussion. So today there'll be 2 of those 3 students on this panel. They'll introduce themselves, and Rudy, one of the students, will give a more technical introduction to Kendall. So these intros, also my pronoun is he, him, by the way. I want to just remind all the panelists to specify that. And then we'll do quick intros. Kendall will give a brief intro, and then we'll have a conversation for about 20 minutes within the panel. And then from there, we're going to open it up to the larger public. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, we'll promote you to a panelist, and you can either ask that question live on video. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just submit a text question via the Q&A. Okay. So I'm going to open it up to Rudy now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rudy. I'm third-year design student at PNCA. My pronouns are he, him, and yeah, I was tasked with like researching Kendall Henderson. So he's a creative director and designer based out of New York City, and his passions take him through such mediums as print, photography, and fashion. He's part of the design collective called Please Respect Our Neighbors, and as one of its founding members, he works with various clients such as DKNY, Nike, and Google to redefine their branding and what looks like to be a company today. His work is rooted in traditional design with contemporary aesthetic to bring it into the modern era.
Thank you, Rudy.
Nice. That's me.
Kristen, do you want to give a short intro to yourself too? I don't know if, is Lizzie here, by the way? I can't. Doesn't, no, right?
I texted her and she said she was driving, so.
Okay, all right. Okay. I think you're muted, Kristen, sorry.
Duh, classic. We can always promote her if if she's able to dial in. Maybe not while driving. Hi, I'm Kristen Rogers Brown, and I remember seeing some of you in real person, human form, over the last couple of years as part of our design lecture series. I'm the department head in graphic design, and I teach our Center for Design class, which is our real world working studio class, as well as thesis and advanced studio for the seniors getting their portfolios together. So I've always been really interested in that period that we're in now, where designers are, you know, half in school and half like in the working, figuring out what their practice is going to be in their lives. And I'm a big believer in the fact that that's a work in progress the whole way through your career. So as a designer, I work in publications and user experience and web interfaces, brand. So I'm really excited to be able to talk with y'all and with Kendall. I'm going to mostly sit back and let our students and you know, Kendall take the stage, but just here to support.
Thank you, Kristen. Kendall, we'll open it up to you if you want to say a few things to start off. And then Rudy, if you want to ask the first question after that.
Sure. Yeah. The background research was good. Fill in a couple blanks. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, which is sometimes a surprise to people. I made my way over to Portland in 2011 as an intern at Nike. And since then have been, you know, collecting a pretty vast network. Met Bijan pretty early on when he got into Portland and when I got there. And then since then we've been sort of, you know, developing. Pronoun, anything is fine. Having a unisex name, I'm kind of already used to that. Yeah.
I see that Lizzie just joined. Lizzie, do you want to just give a quick intro and your pronouns? And then Rudy will. Yeah.
I'm Lizzie. I go by she, her, and I live in like Oswego. It's like right outside of Portland. And I'm a junior for graphic design.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead then. So we were talking a little bit about like, there's already so much uncertainty in the design world that like the added uncertainty of COVID on top of that, especially when working on like long-term projects that sometimes take years to execute, like how that looks right now.
Yeah, we spoke about this a little bit. offline, but I think to reiterate, but also like expand on, I think the uncertainty is something that is not necessarily that frightening. It seems like it is. But I don't think we ever are really sure of like our career path, our, you know, the work we're doing, the clients we want, the structure, the process. We're never really quite firm on it. I think we understand after experience, Bijan and I, like certain things work, we get that. And they're easier than others to execute, but that doesn't necessarily make them the correct or the right way. So the uncertainty is kind of always there. It's a little bit more in our face now because of a lot of reasons. Yeah, I mean, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think something we were talking about yesterday was just like how the uncertainty feels like it's providing a bit more space to have more perspective on our practices and what we do. And I think a lot of people are being challenged right now, and I think it's actually a healthy thing to be challenged. And I think that was something I brought up yesterday, was like maybe that was something I didn't do as much prior to this moment. I think a lot of people are being called out and a lot of places are being called out, and I think it's like a good time to look at yourself and how you can be better too. And I think that's something I've been a bit interested in as well through that.
Yeah, and to expound on that, like I think there is more incentive to like challenge, whereas before I think we were in a place where there were a lot more distractions, or there was a lot of what I'm calling distractions, or things that were like driving us that were maybe not necessarily so important. And after this moment, we're realizing that's maybe not sustainable, mentally, physically, monetarily, so on and so forth. And it's causing us to have a little bit more incentive to like, you know, really want more from life, people around us, jobs, so on and so forth.
Yeah, to be better, like challenging people to be better as they should, right?
Which is always interesting to me, like listening or like seeing students come up and come through the path of curriculums in school. I feel like you guys are in like kind of the most interesting place because the framework is a little bit loose, whereas I think for us, we were very, you know, we could choose to kind of break the mold, or we could follow the mold and things would really work out. But now I feel like there's like so many more opportunities. There's so much more to kind of think about and digest before moving forward.
Like what sense do you mean specifically? Like the fact that like politics seems or like more integrated, or
super deep there. But I think even just to rein it back, like the choice of like job after school for us was like pretty simple. You know, you had a few brands that were doing cool things. You had a few, you know, great studios that were like of record. But now it's like, you know, there's 100 studios in New York City, like within my like 1 mile radius, you know? Everyone has a practice, everyone's doing something. There's a bunch of freelancers out there. We all have access to, you know, cool work through social. It just kind of spreads out the viability. Whereas for us, we could see what it was. It was like Pentagram. It was like the old design movements, and we could either go for that or choose to not.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like Rudy and Lizzie, like what kind of jobs do you want to have after you graduate? Do you have any sense of that? Whether it's industry or style of agency or studio, like, do you have any idea?
I mean, I went into PNCA not knowing I would do design, and I feel like every day I learn more different things that design can be. So I don't know. Personally, I'm still feeling it out. I don't know if I have a specific sense, but I definitely enjoy like all the work that Fisk does and all the artists that they like do visuals for, I guess. I definitely enjoy like I guess like merging of different art forms, like designers working with musicians and stuff like that.
I don't really know what I want to do, but I think like small studios are like really cool because they do like different things. And also like last year someone was like how like graphic designers do like set design for like concerts, which is like not even a thing anymore because of COVID. But I thought like that was like super cool. And also like Broccoli magazine, I just like how they're like smaller and like do like cool 3D stuff sometimes. But also like Nike and everything seems super cool. So I don't really know what I want to do yet. But,
Yeah,
mhm.
that's a big
Do
range.
you, with that said, like both those things, like Fisk, I think is pretty important to Portland, important to the design community and industry. Like, what is that? I mean, do you feel that pressure? Is there like pressure there? I've talked to you about this a few times, but
No, I don't feel any like immediate pressure from like the city at large or anything.
no, I mean in terms of like kind of the weight that you hold on like what design or what a small studio looks like.
I mean, I think it's just like, and maybe this is like a misconception, but I think it's so hard to have any time to think about that. Like, you know, we're working every day. We're not like thinking about that larger perception or larger perspective all the time. And I think if we are like looking at the larger perspective, we're really looking internally at our studio culture and how we can make our day-to-day environment better. I think like the results of that are inevitable, and I think it just like kind of comes from within, right? So we're not thinking of really like our outward. I mean, the thing we are thinking about right now specifically is how do we capture our studio environment and culture and everyone here digitally and socially through the internet. I think that's like a really big challenge of like how do you show your personality through Instagram or through a website? Like, are you funny? Are you serious? Are you like mysterious? What are you? You know? And I think that's something that I'm more unfamiliar with than probably most of the students in my class. Like, it's funny because I feel like so my class has been, you know, on Zoom this semester, and I feel like most of the students feel pretty comfortable through video chat. And, you know, I don't feel that comfortable with video chat. Like, I very much feel more comfortable in person. So I think I have to work quite hard to like figure out how to be myself on this panel and also like through Instagram. So I think I'm curious, like how is it not as big of a gap for Rudy and Lizzie? Like, how do you see kind of who you are, you know, in real life versus digital life? I mean, because they are kind of, for me, they feel kind of separate, and I'm working to kind of blur those lines more. That doesn't really answer your question entirely, Kendall, but I think it's something that I think about often.
It's sort of, yeah, it's something you're thinking about for your studio.
Mm-hmm.
And yourself, which the two are, you know, hand in hand. But I would think that, you know, I'm maybe the opposite in that sense because for me, I think about like what my practice studio ventures mean in the long run, like every day, all the time. And like the concept that I've kind of landed on for why I do that is like simply because like if I can shape what a client relationship with a designer looks like, then that means that I'll get to benefit from it, you know? So like if I can at least inform, you know, hey, these things are bad behavior and these are bad practices, and they end up damaging or, you know, damaging like the designer themselves in terms of their, you know, mental state, but mostly the work. It doesn't allow the work to be the best work that it could be. So in my mind, I'm like constantly looking for ways to create a studio or create an environment that says we're kind of going against what's been the norm, so that I don't really have to deal with it later on. Because
Totally.
I think one of the questions was asked, like, what would I tell myself, my younger self? And I think the thing I would say is like, I don't have the energy anymore to sort of face it. So I need clients to help me and work with me to, you know, understand like what it is that makes work better so that we can make it better.
Yeah, I hope we're shifting in that direction for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, I think studios like yours definitely kind of disrupted what it looked like to be an agency.
But yeah, but I think, I mean, that's personally why I think I don't work in-house somewhere, and a big reason why I wanted to work for myself was because I didn't love the environment. And I think now it's like much more public of these environments and how they're not the most healthy. And I think the kind of, and like the idea of how you should be is changing. Like before it was very much like work hard, work late nights, like don't ask questions or don't be like challenging and just like do what you're told kind of. And that was like 6 years ago, you know, it's not like 50 years ago, it was like 6 years ago. And now it's like more emphasis on empathy and like being a decent person. And it's like kind of seems obvious. And I think for me, when I started working professionally outside of school, that was my perspective, was like, you can work hard and have fun and be nice. And that's kind of what I learned in school, is being with this cohort of people who are really passionate, and we wanted to work a ton, but we also wanted to party and get to know each other and have fun. And I saw that was possible there. And then I graduated and it was like a skewed version of that. So I left, and that's kind of like, I always say, like, I'm trying to recreate the studio or the school environment with our studio. I loved school personally. I mean, I think that's a big reason of why I teach. You know, I had like, what a dream. You're like around 15 other people who are also interested in the same thing as you, who come from all different backgrounds. It's such a special time to be, I know, growing and learning and all being in a similar place.
Yeah, I mean, we love school. Everybody, I feel like, takes for granted this moment where you're surrounded by people who are all super passionate about the thing, and all you do is talk about it, and all you do is work toward it and make things better and get critique and focus without all the like life distractions kind of like bearing down on you. I guess what's interesting with the thought about, you know, things shifting, because I definitely see like a perception of things shifting, but I wonder, like, myself, even still working with like, you know, sometimes I like take an agency job or work in house or like on a contract. My studio is set up a little bit different than Bij. And it's still interesting to see the rest of the people, you know, in like a real way. Like, I wonder if,
like, the rest of the people in the sense of people who work at places, or
people work at places. Like, I think the perception of a lot of brands, a lot of corporations, a lot of jobs, a lot of studios, a lot of designers is always different than like what the day-to-day is. And, you know, when it comes to like the idea of like overworking, like, I still think that's very present in small studios, big studios, agencies. It's pretty much everywhere still. And my wonder is, like, we all realize that that's not healthy. We all realize that it's not necessarily going to produce the best. It's kind of a thing that's been going on. But my question is, like, if it's there, you know what I mean? It's really there, whether I like it or not. And I can, you and I are essentially saying, like, we got to stop this somehow. But like, it is still there, you know?
I mean, I think we're more aware of it.
Yeah.
You know, which is super important. Like, none of my teachers were talking to me about wellness and mental health and taking breaks. They were just like more so being like, how can you find ways to work harder? You know, like, they were like, in that context, they're like, how can you make your life easier so you can work more? Which, you know, is also kind of valid in some ways. But now I'm like, I wish my teachers were like teaching me about like mental health, and the sense that like that is the most important thing. And if you're not in a good place and you don't have that space to take care of yourself, then you're not gonna make it work, you know?
Yeah.
And if you're staying up till 3 a.m. every night and eating really poorly and not sleeping, then you're probably not going to make the best work, you know. And I think
Still do.
I
Right
still
now.
do that all the time. I did that last night, you know, trying to McDonald's Grubhub, but you know,
Well,
yeah,
so-
but I think there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. Question though. So with that said, there's also that looming pressure of like, you know, revenue and like, you know, being able to financially support yourself. And I wonder, like, for Rudy, Lizzie, and the rest of the students, like, how often is that making your decisions or like coming into the influence of your decisions? You've probably been thinking about it for 4 years since you've been in school, right?
But it's a reality, yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure, or at least there was for me, especially when I first began, to like, how am I going to monetize the things that I enjoy? And I think a lot of it, I don't know, it's like finding a balance between the art you can do and like get paid for, and then things you can do just for yourself and like not worry about if you can get paid for it or not. And I think that's like how I've become more like balanced and happy with being like a working creative or something.
Yeah. So you kind of have these two sides. Like one is like working on graphic design, art, making money, and then one is like kind of satisfying your own desires and interests through work. Is that kind of what you're saying, Rudy?
Yeah.
Like these two.
And
And
then
then do you have any interest in the kind of blurring those, or like how do you see any possibility there?
I think, I don't know, it like a lot, like sometimes there'll be something that I like could do and get paid for, and then sometimes that same thing is like what I just want to keep for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like being someone who had like drawn since I was young, you assume you're going to be an illustrator, and then I realized that I would hate that. So like, I don't know, I like most drawing I just do for myself, but every once in a while there'll be something that comes around where like someone enjoys something and they're like, oh, can I like buy that from you, or could you like recreate that or something? But design is so cool where there's so many different things that can be considered design, and that you like kind of take for granted that you like can make something like that, because some people really do just need help like making a logo where it's like, I don't know, just their name written in a certain way, and they just want to pay you to do that
Yeah.
or something. And that's like easy work. I guess I don't even think of it. Sometimes I guess I don't even think of it too much as art. It's just like a simple, like creative.
It's like a different part of your brain, kind of.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you enjoy both ends of it?
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, when I think about it and it feels rough, I'm like, well, it's not like a desk job, at least. Like,
Yeah.
like engineering stuff.
Kind of, yeah.
I actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lizzie, do you have thoughts on financial burdens?
Sorry, my mom's like moving stuff in this room. Basically, I like have always like thought about it because like my brother is like really into chemistry and everything, so he's just like, that's like for sure like getting money or whatever. So but like I'm totally like into art and everything. So I've like been like, it kind of like whenever I think of future jobs, I kind of think about like which one will be like more successful, but at the same time I like want to do something that I enjoy, and I think like being an artist you can like do like really cool things. So at like the same time I kind of just want to like make like the coolest thing work. But also like with Rudy's what he said, I also do like personal like projects and stuff, so like it's kind of like a break. And yeah, but
Save the world.
my mom's talking. But yeah, and then that's basically it.
Yeah. It seems like it's interesting because it's like design seems like this profession that has like this duality to it, where it's often like the devil and the angel, or like these two sides of it. That's like, which I think it makes it kind of confusing, right? And I mean, I think that's something that I've experienced talking to students is like, well, I want to do this, but I have to do this, or like, this is what I like, but this is what I probably am going to do. And it's like, it's a really interesting dilemma. Like, I'm not sure if other like creative industries have that same dilemma. Like, but I also just want to say we'll do about 5 more minutes within the panel, and then after that, we'll open it up to the larger public. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll promote you, or you can ask a question via text.
Yeah, I would say like it is very confusing. And oftentimes I find myself like, leaning one or the other. And, the more artistic you lean, the less the clients appreciate. And then you're finding yourself like creating these explanations for why you're trying to go artistic. And it's just like kind of a middle, which is a bit tough. And yeah, I would say that the reason why, or there is that kind of, that pressure, the pressure of deciding whether or not you fully dive into, what it is you want to do. Even when it comes to a client project, like fully diving into like what I'm pitching for work oftentimes results in me having to like scale it back or like change it up based on a non-artistic or a non-fully creative point of view, which is confusing, and that confusion actually like is fatiguing
Totally
in my mind. So it's a big question I have across the board, across the industry, with professionals, students, with everyone, teachers, non-creatives even. I think sometimes there is a little bit of a benefit to having a chemistry job like your brother, where it's just like, this is what you do, and like, it either goes right or it goes wrong. You fix it, accordingly.
I don't know anything about chemistry, but
yeah. So anyways, we should open it to the rest of the.
Okay, cool. Yeah. If anyone else wants to ask questions, just raise your hand. I think something that I'm like realizing kind of is based on that like client process, it feels a lot of the time we're kind of playing a guessing game. And I think like the farther you get away from the like core of the content, right? Like, how many times, like if you're working on a big Nike project for an athlete, it's not like I'm in a room with the athlete talking to them about what their logo should look like. It's like how many levels below that. So like you're just getting farther and farther away from the kind of core of the content. And I think that kind of like makes it seem most of the time with clients that we're like kind of playing a guessing game because we don't really know exactly what it should be or who we're doing it for. We're not that close to it, versus when you're making work for yourself, you're extremely close to it. You know the exact thing that you're trying to solve and what the idea is. And I think kind of in some ways like graphic design is a puzzle when it comes to working with clients. You're trying to like work through it with them.
I think, to add on to that, right before we go to the next phase, I've been trying to do this thing in my work with clients, friends, whoever's coming through the pipe, is just challenging them to really, really know and understand what it is they're trying to achieve, so that I don't have to play this guessing game, because the guessing game ends up being a really inefficient kind of process, and also like ends up, fatiguing me. So I ask as much questions as I can up front, with the most the idea of getting all the details netted out. And the point is to ask a question that they haven't asked themselves yet, so that when you're really starting to do the work, it's all about the work and not kind of like the workaround of trying to figure out what they actually meant by when they said this.
It's like funny, then you realize like how a lot of graphic design isn't about graphic design. It's like about like all the things around it that like you don't necessarily learn in school, but it's like there's so much like psychology and so much process and things that become so important that there's no like clear answer to. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just constantly trying to figure it out and trying to make those processes better. And you kind of have to learn as you go, right? It's like very hard to know from the start. Any questions? Let's see, we see one from Colson. I'm gonna promote you to a panelist so you can ask it, okay? Promote to panelist. Hey Colson, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Yeah, just even just now when you just said a lot of graphic design isn't about actually graphic design, I was just wondering how you could connect that to how you're structuring your studio to sort of emulate maybe a more school-like environment. And also the sort of self-care manifesto of how you're infusing that, because I see, yeah, just like it's important for me to have parameters for myself when it comes to when and how I work, in some sort of like working manifesto. So I was just wondering how you make yourself aware of your own limitations, and then how you respond to those limitations to like produce better work that maybe doesn't look like sitting at a computer and designing, but like the surrounding factors of graphic design.
So first question is like how school has informed kind of like the physical workplace or structure, and then is that right?
Yeah, maybe I could clarify a bit. Yeah, just I think like the school environment offers a lot of like freedom to fail without a lot of like consequences, like, oh, I turned this in late, or like, oh, I'm stayed up all night, so it's okay if I show up to class late, or you can kind of burn yourself out and not suffer any consequences. So I was just wondering how like you try to emulate the school environment in an actual professional work setting that is sustainably not producing burnout for you, and helping you like stay within your limitations, but also like still do work. So if there's like maybe like practices that you have that sort of surround that idea to help you like work within your limitations well.
Yeah,
I'll give a couple maybe just super straightforward ones that I hope answer your question. They're going to seem simple, I'm sure, but one is when accepting work, I kind of always pad time on the end. These projects always will extend longer than you think they will. So giving yourself time to sort of not have to, finish something the day of has been a super push for me in my studio. Even if it's something that I know I can get done in a couple hours, I rarely agree to work like that. And then the second thing is, again, I think always asking too many questions up front, demanding sort of that the client comes to you fully prepared, fully thought through, will always make the process easier. It starts the relationship off better, whereas now you're both working on this thing versus them kind of like passing you some afterthought that they had.
Yeah, like setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. So those two things. There's a few more, but
I think like for me, like I think you did a great job at kind of describing like the perks of being in school, and like the kind of like safety net that I think there is. And I think you can set up your studio to be in a similar way. Like I think we do a lot of things for ourselves, projects and things like that. And I think that's really important for our like workflow, because I think like sometimes when it feels like maybe like the equivalent of a final would be like a big client deadline, and it's like, we're all kind of working together to kind of get to this place and finish this work and be happy with it. But I think it's always, for me, it's always really nice to have something to look forward to. And I think that could be like, it could be something as simple as going out of town for a day or going to the beach, something like more maybe wellness focused that's like not related to being creative, but just having that kind of clarity. And I think for me, it's really helpful to know that I have something to look forward to, that I know after I work really late this one night and eat really poorly, that the next day I'll be able to like not think about it. But I think also on that same side, like having a creative project that you're excited about, I think is also like very helpful. And I think just generally it would be like having something to look forward to. And I think in our studio practice, like we're always working on like really big things and also really small things, and sometimes things for no reason and sometimes things that are stupid. And I think having that kind of workflow that's similar to school, where sometimes you're doing something for your, class. Sometimes you're doing something for a friend in school. You're making a poster for them. Sometimes you're printing something. Sometimes you're just experimenting and exploring because you saw something or someone who you admired. And I think just that like kind of curiosity is really important, and being able to have something to look forward to is probably like the most crucial thing for me, because otherwise I think I'd burn out. Like the last 2 weeks have been really intense, and Friday I'm going out of town, and like knowing that makes me feel like, oh, I'm okay. Like I'm gonna have like 3 or 4 days. I think it's just good to be aware of kind of what your needs are and give yourself that downtime when you need it, when you require it.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a super comprehensive answer from the two of you. Kendall kind of answering from the front end, which I think is like really dependent on Bijan, how you were saying how you feel towards the ends of projects. If you don't set yourself up at the beginning to have that cushion of time, if you finish a project, there's just gonna be another hanging over your head. So yeah, both those probably work very well.
Yeah.
Got to incorporate that more myself.
Cool. What was
Thank you.
your second question? Was sorry,
You
it was,
answered about the kind of
yeah. We answered it. Okay.
Yeah, you
there
actually,
we go. Wow, look at that.
The first question was kind of just a confused delivery. So you
Yeah,
answered,
no.
you answered it after I clarified.
You're figuring it out as you go. That was a great
Yeah.
question. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's a question in
sorry.
the Q&A section. Michael,
Oh, cool.
has a question.
Cool. So the question reads, what things should you ask the client to come with, be prepared with, on the topic of what Kendall mentioned?
I think, again, it's going to sound simple, but I think purpose is a huge one. Ask them what's the reason why they're making a website for, an electric razor. Are they trying to change their razor game? Are they trying to, have a product that has never been released before? Does it have some crazy technology in it? Asking them for those details will ultimately let you know like what lane you should be playing in, and it also causes them to understand what lane they're playing in.
Yeah, I think
reminding them to make that realistic as well.
I think in a more general sense, like not specific to client, but I think like for me, and this is something I tell my students, is like if you show that you care about something, like I think people often react to that, and I think that can go for a student, that can go for like a human interaction, that can go for a client interaction. Like as far as being prepared, I think like you want your client to care about their project as much as you care about what you're going to make for them. And I think if that isn't reciprocated to like some sort of equal footing, it doesn't have to be 50-50. Like obviously some clients are extremely busy and they just need someone to help with something. But I think like if you see your client's investment, you want to invest that back into it to make it successful. And I think that's like a harder thing to ask of a client, but I think maybe that you can use that to gauge whether it's the right person to work with in that moment in time, and what benefits you're going to get out of it.
Exactly.
Okay, we have another question from Oscar. Hey, Oscar. What were things you learned in your first job that have been important for the rest of your career? Was there anything that surprised you in your first job about the industry? What design as a career is really like?
I'll let you take that one, B.
Okay. Let me read it again.
You said it yesterday.
I mean, I think, wait, I said it yesterday?
Yeah.
I don't remember what I said yesterday, but I think like the thing that was the most eye-opening in my first job was how many people work on a project and how it's like really not about yourself. And I think that was like really humbling, where like in school, it's just about like how well you do on this project and like how good your work is and how, good you do in critique. And it's very independent in a lot of ways, in majority of your time in school. Obviously you're like, in a class with other people, but I think like when I worked at Nike, I realized how it was not about me, and it was very much about a bigger picture and a bigger mission. And I think I really enjoyed that perspective, because it made me realize how important collaborating with people is and what other people can bring to a project. Like as far as skill sets, that like graphic design is just one small piece of this puzzle. Writing, all these other roles are extremely important. Kendall, what do you think about that
Yeah.
answer?
I'll say the same. I think I learned right away that graphic design alone is not going to be the thing that makes this work. You have to kind of have all parties working together at one goal. And the closer, the more cohesive that is, the better. But I think what I really, and I'm maybe going to get in trouble for this, but immediately realized that like working, period, is political. You get thrown into the mix with a bunch of different people, and a bunch of people who may be in roles that they shouldn't be in, that they're not as good as they could be. They're not challenging themselves. They're not as curious as they should be. They're not as versatile as they should be. A lot of different things, and you get thrown into the mix, and you kind of have to like, oh, I understand what it's like to work with this person, and they take that information to the next person, and so on and so forth. And that's really like a thing that,
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, it's like everyone has their own agenda, and I think that's something that you have to be aware of and be careful of. Yeah, it's kind of
you have to understand it's there. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So,
and everyone has an agenda, and like you should have an agenda too. And I think there's like a positive and a negative way of approaching that, or a selfish way and a selfless way of approaching that. And I think a lot of the times when you're working somewhere, it does define who you are as a person, and your ethics and your morals and your principles, although it might not seem that directly connected, they are, you know. Are you looking to better yourself only and firstly, or are you looking to kind of make a change in the environment that you're in and challenge what's come before you? And I think, you know, inevitably you're going to make that decision whether or not you're extremely conscious of it. But I think now we're seeing people be more and more aware of this in 2020, which is absolutely insane to me that this isn't something that people have been criticizing earlier, because the problem's been there for a long time. So yeah, cool. We'll go on to the next question. All right, let's see. This question reads, what are the best things a learning designer student can do to get a job they are excited about and feel like they can be themselves?
Apply, reach out, show interest. All these things are great. Lean on your network as well. All these people in your classes and around you are going to be advocates for you. Make sure your name is known in their mouths. I got the Nike job because a friend of mine, you know, put me up for it, because I didn't even get invited to the like group interview. I was kind of new at my school, but I was interested in t-shirts, and they mentioned that that's what they were looking for. And my friend knew who I was, knew what I was up to, and because I made it known, and got me an internship.
I think my two answers to that would be, do it yourself right now. Like, don't wait, just like do it. Like if you're interested in A and B and C, just start it as a student project. I think you have that ability as a designer to make a logo, make a website, make an Instagram. You can make something as real as any corporation or person without having any money. I think that's like the beautiful power of being a graphic designer in 2020, is that we don't need anyone, that we can design, animate, code, print, publish, and mail all ourselves. And I think if you do that, then that will lead you to the job that you want. Okay, next question. All right, when you are a studio, how do you balance financial needs with working for clients who maybe don't share your values? Example, working with a sneaker company despite labor rights violations. Kendall, you want to answer that one?
Interestingly enough, I mean, man, how can I go about this? To just be blunt, like we work in a capitalist environment. America, every corporation is based on the need of profit. And that profit often takes form in taking advantage of whoever it might be. So that said, sometimes you have to kind of balance, put on a spectrum of like where you want to play. And again, going back to the original, or one of the earlier questions about being surprised when you get onto the job force. There are ways to kind of set yourself up to get a benefit out of it. So if you are working for a sneaker company, there's, you know, these opportunities to maybe like influence the way that they are treating their labor force, or bringing to attention incorrect behavior. And then also getting the benefit of being able to financially support yourself so that you can take less work, like for companies that are not necessarily having the best practices. That's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. Like, America is a capitalistic country, and it's hard to avoid that. Like, most of the structures that we exist in are created to be taking advantage of people. I don't agree with that, and I don't like that, but it's the reality we live in. And unfortunately, we're not really set up for success to be able to challenge those constructs effectively. So I think
we can challenge them. It's hard to tear them down, right?
Exactly. It's like very hard. Like, I was talking to my mom last night about the financial system. Like, the tax system in the United States is literally made so that people can take advantage of it. It's designed to do that. But I think for me, and the way that I've been coping with this question is looking at my immediate community. And I think that is the way that I kind of challenge that, is I focus on this studio, the people in the studio first and foremost, and then, you know, the literal neighborhood that I live in, to like the city that I live in. And I really tried to I try to affect those things that are in my immediate control, because I think starting small is a way of staying positive and optimistic that change is possible. But like Kendall said, I think it's just a spectrum of things that you have to, you know, at the end of the day, feel comfortable with doing yourself. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. But I don't think that people should not do any corporate work and not make money, because there is benefits to these larger companies that they can provide fees and money that other places can't. And it's up to you whether you go buy a $500 bag, or if you donate that money, or if you invest it in your own studio practice or in your own initiative. So, you know, not to like use a cliche of a Robin Hood mentality, but you can take from the rich and do something more impactful with it. All right. Let's see.
Hey, Bijan, I just wanted to say, with the Q&A, I've noticed, and kind of similar to the topic you guys are talking about, the anonymous attendee at the bottom keeps getting bumped down.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you want
to. Thank you. Yeah, so anonymous attendee. Thanks, Chelsea. Considering everything that's happening in the world currently, I feel personally that graphic design is more futile than ever. Making money for companies while blue collar essential workers are suffering is just hard to deal with, especially right now. Do you ever feel this way? Are we helping to make the world worse? Great question. Kendall?
It's a very tough question, because it's something you kind of have to have foresight into like what it is that you're like, you know, every part of what it is that you're making, delivering, working on, so on and so forth, will have, you know, the ripple effect through the world and through time. It's really hard to say. I think that traditionally graphic design, and again, this kind of goes back to like the whole capitalistic structure. Like, traditionally graphic design was to communicate a message. I think very quickly that message, or that process, turned into either propaganda or advertising. So promoting a message with the idea of specific gain in some way. I don't necessarily think that every piece of communication is that, but I do think that we can, as designers, like interject whenever possible. I mean, I challenge, again, this goes back to challenging professors, structures, clients all the time to really question like what it is they're putting out. I just was on a project where, you know, I had a bunch of feedback from the agency that was working with the agency that hired me. And I felt us, you know, with like the political side of things and the way that process works, like getting away from the idea. And eventually I just had to do more work, but I put a bunch of upfront in the presentation we were working on that just basically said, like, this is the opportunity. If we're not, you know, aiming for the stars, if we're not aiming for like the best that we can provide for the communities that are going to be involved in this project, we're doing everyone a disservice. And they kind of, you know, nodded their heads, which is really all I can do. So yeah, I mean, I think we have to use whatever tools and skills we can to kind of fight and interject when we can.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I do think, I mean, day to day, even last year, things feel futile being a designer. Like I think it's a common feeling where you don't really know if what you're doing is important. I think that's like a pretty normal feeling. And I think I feel that more than ever now. And I don't know if we're helping to make we are helping make the world worse, but I think a lot of people are making the world worse too. And I think we can also help make it better in some ways too. I think I don't necessarily have the answer to that. I guess I would lean on more of like local community. Again, like kind of how can you help your neighbor or the person next to you? Yeah, I mean, it's just a really difficult time right now. And yeah, Kristen, go ahead.
I said I would be quiet, but then I think this discussion is so good. That's like a lifelong question, right? It's like something I think each of us is going to hopefully struggle with in our practice. And I appreciate all these different perspectives on it, because even, you know, when I was in school 100 billion years ago, maybe not that long, but a little bit ago, before Zoom for sure, people were asking my mentors these same questions too. And so if we can try to put more good and more challenge and like help people grapple with these puzzles or even start the conversation, maybe design can do more good. It doesn't mean that you're going to solve all the problems, but I mean, inherent in both of your answers is like, it takes all roles to like support a revolution. So if that's, if your role is more quiet or your role is more visual thinking, like that's a role.
And one last thing, I was reading a new program for graphic design. It's a book that just came out last year. But one of the things that's really stuck with me that David said in that book is that he proposes graphic design as a liberal art. And he says like maybe graphic design is the most liberal art of all, because it doesn't have any it requires content to work with. And I think that just makes me think of this question in the sense that maybe our job is to help amplify voices or people that need help being amplified right now. So maybe that's a way we can help. And I think we are seeing that on Instagram with a lot of these amazing guides that are posted on Instagram, whether it's about breathing bad air quality or about Black Lives Matter or about COVID. I think those are some small ways that we can lend our skill set to help, because I don't think necessarily we don't have to create the content ourselves. We can help elevate someone's content. Cool, I'll go to the next question from Leah Maldonado. The question reads, Kendall, we worked together while I was very junior. As a junior, I was thankful to have you as someone I could follow and listen to. And I was surprised when I felt you sometimes following and listening to me, in parentheses, a silly junior with no idea what was going on. What do you think shaped you into being a good leader? How can juniors take steps towards being good leaders and team members while they are still in caterpillar learning phase? Great question.
Hi, Leah. Yeah, I was looking at this one. I think it's funny, like thinking of yourself as a good leader. I don't know if I agree, but I do think that curiosity is a big thing for me. It led me to be interested in what it was that you were thinking and why you were wanting to do the things you do and present the work that you were presenting. that curiosity is taken for granted sometimes, I think, on a lot of people. But I think there's a huge thing to be learned from naivety. The longer I go through my career, the more, I guess, specific I get, because I understand what works, and it's really hard to break yourself from that once you've like gone through the process and you understand like what's on the other side. It's hard to like look left. So that naive kind of energy is really great to like soak up. Juniors taking steps to being good leaders or being in this place, I think, is what you did, is having a point of view. It doesn't matter if it's wrong or right. I think having a position is huge because people will recognize that you made a decision. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Kendall. Next question. It's 1:30. We're probably going to go a bit over. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So this is from Carrie. The question reads, how has your education, in parentheses, and the environment of your college played a role in your design work? What part of college was or is the most influential for you?
I'll read that. Yeah, I think for me, being in a position where I was surrounded by people who were passionate about a topic was really helpful in recognizing that like that was going to be my network or my family. Was a huge, advocate, and I guess the way that I look at how I want my career to look. Like Bij said, we're both kind of always chasing like that environment again. But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of what you get like put into it. Like I was constantly, in front of my professors, in front of other students, working in the same room, not necessarily on the same things, but just being around the environment of design and the curiosity that comes with that kind of forced me to have a good education, where I've seen people not have the same experience. And I can only say it's because of what you put in, how interested you are in it.
Yeah, I think for me, the most important was like having that, like you can have fun and work. And that's something I want to forever do, is have fun while I work. And I don't want to accept anything otherwise. And that goes for having fun with the people you work with during your lunches, during those like moments where you're just friends, but so the moments where you're actually making work in the program or collaborating with the client. Like my goal is always to have fun. I know that sounds like really maybe naive, I guess, or maybe abstract, but I think I feel really fortunate that design is a playful medium and industry. I just feel really able to be able to make something. I love making things. Like we're working on a project, and yesterday got a prototype for this opera making, and it's just holding that object is just so, it's so beautiful and I think I love that creation process. Okay, next question from Katie. How important or helpful is it to find your niche, or as a designer, become a specialist versus a generalist?
This is like a question that comes up all the time. And to be honest, like, I feel like I'm on the opposite side of the fence every time it gets asked.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think the thing with being a generalist kind of goes back to that thing that I paraphrased from a new program for graphic design, that like graphic design it has to work with content. And if you're not working in-house at a place where you're working on the same content over and over again, it's kind of your job to likely be working with a variety of contents. Like whether you're working at an agency or a personal studio, it's not like you're going to work with the same person. Truly, you have to be a generalist because you're going to attain various forms of knowledge from projects you work on. I think the specialist question is really depending on you as a person. Like some people just love being good at one thing and just really want to find the ins and outs of 3D and push that medium. And I think that's beautiful. And some people jump from technology to break systemic structures, even if a smaller local studio aligns more with someone's values. Do you feel like the experience, in parentheses, both with design skills and the working environment at a corporate agency is sometimes necessary to start out with right after school?
Leah kind of had that situation coming out of school, going into like a proper ad agency. And I would say maybe not. If you can get into a small studio, it's really not, I shouldn't say small, like if you can get into a place that is at least design forward, I think you'll learn more. You'll still get the bits of advertising and the marketing education through that job, but I think design first as like kind of a philosophy of the company is pretty is gonna keep you, I guess, stronger footed in like our industry. Plus the fact that, you know, the first bits of work that you do coming out of school is going to start your resume off. That's what your portfolio is going to be filled with. That's what your resume is going to say. And it's kind of dangerous because you can end up being that for the rest of your career, just based on, you know, the cadence.
Yeah. I think every experience is valid. And even if you don't like something, at least you're learning what you don't like. And I'm sure there's some positives that you're also going to take with you. So I feel like even working at a corporate agency after school, even if you hate it, like you're going to learn so much that will kind of shape your next steps. And I think that is extremely important. And maybe just as valid as diving straight into a small studio. I mean, a lot of the time I feel like I should have worked more professionally in the sense of like what Kendall's done, like really gotten a sense of a wide variety of in-house places, larger agencies. I feel really naive a lot of the time running a studio because I don't have that base knowledge. And I think, you know, you can continue learning after you graduate from school. And if you just kind of keep that perspective, then you can't go wrong really with what you do. Okay, next question from Charles. Going back to the comments on social media, this is kind of a two-pronged question. First, how are you staying active in self-promotion during these trying times, whether to bring in new business or to sharpen your skills? I'll start with that first question, and then we can dive into the second one.
You should. I think you should take this one.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely like, I think when you have to be conscious of like the larger environment and whether something is appropriate to post or not. And I think you have to be sensitive to that and you have to be aware. I think it's a requirement with, you know, everything that's happening on social media or in politics or in our life. So I think first and foremost, like gauge that environment and see if you feel comfortable sharing something workist or promotion focused. For me, like us being a small business, like our Instagram is a necessary evil. And I think it's something we have to use to get work. And it's the way that we get most of our work. And it's something we've built up over time. And for me, it feels really selfless because it's not me, it's Fisk. And it makes it easy for me to just post work on there. I don't have to think too hard about it. And there's something I actually appreciate about it being like more business oriented and being something that's bigger than me. And I think maybe that's something I learned at Nike. So for me, posting on Instagram is very important, and having that kind of free space, free advertising space. Like we can't compete with larger studios in a lot of different ways, but everyone can have an Instagram. And I think it's a great way to be on even footing with some of the larger shops and to be able to compete with them and get your name out there. And I think it just takes time to build. And I think you can do it in a way that feels appropriate to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is always a tough one. I feel like I talk about this so much. I personally think that social media is super dangerous because of a few reasons. The one I guess we'll talk about here is like self-promotion. And maybe this is because of my personality as well, but like I always find it really tough to stay out of the bad behavior, I guess. When you post something on social media and sort of get that validation or get that, you know, work relation, or you get a new client because of it, so on and so forth, it's hard to distinguish, you know, what the reason was after that point. Let me know if this is not making sense, by the way. But I try to treat social media as like a free-for-all. Like I try myself not to care about what I'm putting up or what the output is. I fortunately don't get a lot of work from social. I'd say I've gotten a couple of jobs, like full-time jobs from it. But then after that point, I kind of fell off of it and started treating it a little different. Because I'm very wary that I don't want to find myself, in a cycle that I'm not like aware of happening. So I'm really careful, but.
I think also like just comparing me and you, I think it's a good example of how like everything depends on your personality. And I think like Kendall is much more social than me and also lives in New York City, and I live in Portland in the middle of nowhere. Just joking. But like I live in Portland and I don't have access to the kind of people that Kendall does. And so Instagram for me is a way of kind of getting by living in Portland, and it gives me access to people in Europe and Asia and New York that I wouldn't have access with in Portland because there's not much of an industry in Portland. So I think I just want to point that out as an example of like, it really depends on where you live, who you are, like what you do, so yeah. The second part of that question is, what are you doing to keep your skills sharp in design or producing content?
Curiosity. It's always the answer. It's just being
totally
interested in whatever it is outside of design, film, travel, running, sports, anything.
Yeah.
Cooking.
I can't stress curiosity is like the most important thing. Next question from Clay. Hey, Clay. Do you have any suggestions for how to make connections with studios, especially more atelier ones, and potential clients in the current circumstances with financial and social restrictions shaping creative industry at the moment? Great question.
Think just reach out. It's easier than ever to send a DM, find someone's email, find the info at address, reach out, ask your friends if they know people, once you see that there's mutual connections, make sure people know your name. That's really it.
And be a good person.
I'm assuming that's already there.
Yeah. All right. Jason.
Wait,
hey,
actually,
Jason.
sorry, to go back to that, that's a very good point. Like, you want people to like know your name, but think of you as like, oh, I enjoyed that time that I spent with that person or that conversation or whatever. You don't want to be an asshole and like, be difficult to work with until you get to be my age. But at first, you want to keep it light and like just be a person that people liked working with.
And I think like, again, like I think showing people that you care and that you're doing it because you care is extremely important. Like when I get emails from students or even clients who just send like a 3-word email or just send like a generic response, like it shows me that you don't care. And if you don't care, why should I care? And especially from this like first digital kind of medium where you're sending an email or a DM, if it doesn't have that care in it, then I think you should like be aware of that, because I think people will notice. And I think the other thing is yourself, that like everyone is a person, everyone fucks up, everyone has flaws, everyone is stupid and smart. Like, just don't feel intimidated when you talk to someone, and just be yourself and show them your true self, because I think that's what people are going to gravitate towards always. And your most valuable asset is your personality and yourself. So I think just really, if you can be yourself, like work towards that, because I think other people react to that and respond to that. Okay, Jason's question, classic Jason question, is what makes someone a good designer? How many times have you asked this question, Jason? A lot. You're going to be the smartest graphic designer in the world eventually. Asking this question over and over again.
A lot of things make a good designer. It depends on, actually, there's a lot of factors. I don't think it's really that straightforward. There's a lot of things to take into account. It's the project, it's the client, it's the environment of the world, it's the climate, it's a bunch of things. I think the best you can do is just, again, be curious about what it is you're passionate about, what you're being asked to work on. Just being curious.
Cool. There you go, Jason. All right, Ryan, with a follow-up, is part of the element of what Anonymous is raising is that white collar work is valued more than certain positions, and part of the response is valuing all work and workers regardless of their education, profession, etc. Great question.
I mean, you think about the narrative of, again, the capitalistic environment, entrepreneurialism is kind of always the top, the icing. But it's not to say that certain like trades, I even think about this a lot of the time, like certain trades are really, really valuable and you can get paid quite a bit, being an electrician. But what we're really talking about is perception, I suppose, or like what he was mentioning is the perception of what we're working on, what it is that a brand is after, and making sure that like you kind of understand like what pieces are at play, if that's maybe answering the question or not. But I don't think that blue collar is less valuable. I think it's actually usually more valuable. It's just maybe not perceived as that way.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Kendall. Thanks, Ryan. Layla, what would you hope the future of graphic design be in a perfect case scenario? Kendall?
Clients paying up front.
Honestly, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I mean, that kind of leads me to like, I think there was one panel we were both on earlier this year where someone asked this amazing question that they asked if they ever think that there will be a graphic design union. And I think what you just said, Kendall, could be a part of that larger idea of there being some standards that we work within in the industry. Because like, it's absolutely insane. Like the more you get into the industry, you'll realize that the bigger clients you have, not in all cases, but the less they'll pay or the longer it'll take for them to pay. And it's like, I'm talking about people who are millionaires, like maybe billionaires, and they don't value our work to that extent where you have to fight to get paid a few $1,000s when that's nothing to them. Like that's absolutely outrageous to me that we live in this environment, this industry where people have to fight to get paid to survive. Like,
yeah, and it's like, I mean, going back to the blue collar thing, it's like you don't have a mechanic work on your car and then pay them. You pay them before they work.
Yeah. Or you don't pay them 6 months later.
Right, 6 months later after.
Or 8 months later.
But so like, I think
yeah,
we've had this conversation because not just because like financially it makes sense, but it also establishes a certain level of trust. If you're going to pay someone the money that you expect them to, do this work for, then that means you trust them to do the work. And I think that kind of role reversal or that kind of flip flop is like very negative for our industry.
Something I've done recently is I require 50% upfront from any new client. And that's something I don't think I ever felt confident enough to do. And now I do. And it's been like, it changes the whole game. It's really nice. Okay, thank you, Layla. Next question from Jules. How do you see the graphic design industry? Do you think this is going to be affected by the pandemic in the next months or year?
I think our industry, in a sense, in this space, because we can, am I breaking up?
No, you're fine.
I think because of things moving onto digital platforms just kind of opens the door more for graphic design. So it's definitely gonna be, but you know, other things are gonna be shaped by this. I think there's certain behaviors that are being shaped by the pandemic for sure, and in terms of the industry. So there's more digital work out there than there's ever been. We've kind of lost this point the kind of environmental or like events-based design lane for the short term or maybe longer term, we'll see, but there's definitely things that are changing, but as like graphic design as a whole, there's still going to be somewhere that we can plug in.
Cool. All right. We have 2 more questions. We'll end it after that, I think. One more question from Jason. Do you know who you are as a designer? If so, what were the key factors in that discovery?
Bish?
I mean, it's something that again, it's like a work in progress. And I think like I'm realizing how my childhood and my family and my parents' culture is a big part of me as a human, and inevitably a big part of me as a designer or curator or whatever. I think I've in the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen a lot more parallels and between those. Like for example, like in Iranian culture, hosting is very important, and making sure your guests feel welcome is very important. And I've like 3 years into the gallery, I realized that there was like a relationship between the idea of my family hosting parties as it and me throwing gallery events in Portland, with this idea of like, you just want to make sure that your guests are having a good time and that you want to take care of them and make sure they feel comfortable. So I think like those for me have been unexpected ways of finding myself as a designer and practice, like a practitioner, and what I'm interested in, drawing parallels there. Also for me, like my graphic design practice is very much attached to life and lifestyle. I think that's also something that again depends on who you are as a person. It might not be right for everyone, but for me, like I love music and I love musicians and I'm so curious about them as people. So inevitably I've always wanted to work with musicians because I love music. And I think it's as simple as that. And I've worked towards that. And same with a lot of other industries. Like I do like sports, you know, I'm not an obsessive sports person, but I do enjoy sports and I enjoy the passion and hard work that happens in that, the dedication, and I can relate to that on that level. So I also like working with Nike for that reason. So I think really like for me, and it might not be the right answer for you, Jason, but like drawing parallels between your personal life and your professional life. Again, because graphic design is this kind of unique industry where it doesn't have content. It requires content to work. So.
Yeah, second that. I would say you will find that the line is often the same line between, you know, graphic design and who you are as a person, like who you are as a designer and who you are as a person. I would say for me, some of the key factors that were involved were watching professors and, you know, my during the learning phases of my career, my schooling, but also maybe my career too, but like seeing that people were passionate about things. I was interested in things that they were interested in because they were so interested in it. And when they could clearly articulate some idea or some form, I got the opportunity to learn from like Massimo Vignelli for a while, and like his approach was so clear. And I think that I was drawn to the idea of like, oh, I want to develop an approach that's that clear one day. So I think that was a key moment for me in learning that, learning who I was as a designer, being so curious, but also like looking for this clear approach.
One last question, and I'm gonna see if Chris Burnett will accept being promoted to a panelist, but I think this question is relevant. How do you feel about all the Instagram designers referencing each other where all the work is starting to look the same?
That's the danger of social. That's what I was saying.
It is true.
It's so hard to distinguish like whether something is coming out because of a pure thought or really an idea, or if it's being that, if it's just a thing that we know works.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a specific question that I thought I'd be curious to hear your opinion on, but it says, how do you feel about all the Instagram designers referencing each other where all the work is starting to look the same?
I mean, I definitely think it's shifting the way that we express our creativity as designers, as artists. I don't know if necessarily it's making everything look the same, but it's kind of lowering the standard of quality. That's in my opinion. Like, someone can create something in 2 seconds and it's sitting right next to maybe someone who's taken 2 years to create something. And so it's created this kind of even playing field, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, but in terms of creative industries, it can lead to kind of a homogenization, which, you know, it just kind of makes things boring. But in a cyclical fashion, it could also lead to a window of opportunity for things to become way more exciting really soon.
Yeah. So it's like a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, a blessing and a curse. It kind of goes back and forth.
And I will just also note that Chris Burnett doesn't use Instagram, so and he has, and yeah, which I respect. But
I do not. Yeah, good question.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the time we have. Appreciate everyone being here and asking great questions. Thank you to Kendall and Rudy and Lizzie and Kristen, everyone at PNCA, and Chelsea for helping host this. And I've had a lot of fun today. Yeah.
The last question, I think we can answer real quick. I just lost it though. I tried to type the answer, but it didn't work. It was basically asking, since there's a lot of studios and agencies and clients that prefer to hire, I wonder if whoever wrote it can pop it back into the question.
Yeah, throw it in the chat or back on the Q&A.
You can also go to answered under Q&A.
Okay.
Oh, I see it. It says how does one break out of in-house if they're interested in going into agencies? It seems like a lot of people prefer to hire designers with agency experience than not.
Yeah, I think like the issue with that is like people kind of want to pigeonhole, like, make sense of things. So they're going to hire you if you have experience in the thing that they're trying to hire you for, which often isn't always the best approach. It isn't the best approach, to be honest, because you won't get diversity of thought that way. The advice to breaking out is you kind of have to just position yourself for that kind of work. I think if you're in-house at an agency, in-house at a brand, and you are working with or see the way that they work with an agency, just start interjecting and trying to get your foot into that process. And then once you can claim it, then you can present it to the agency when you go to interview or present the experience. Oftentimes that's all it takes.
Cool. Thank you, Kendall, for answering that last question. Again, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to be hosting another panelist. I'm just going to give a quick promo for that. It is, when is it? 1 second. It is with Christine Shen and Angie Bach. It will be October 6th at 6:30 p.m. PST, so Pacific Standard Time. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Kendall. Thank you everyone at PNCA. Appreciate the conversation and discourse and looking forward to having more of this.
Cool.
Thank you, Kendall.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Good job, guys.